Here I'm reading The Black Portrait of Ottawa in 2020. What I'm going to share with you is how I fear we'll be remembered in about 100 years from now. They would say the last racially segregated school in Colchester, Ontario had shut down in 1965. Yet well into the 21st century, 17% of people living in the most inequitable neighborhoods in Canada's capital city were still black, and 79% of all the low-income people lived in those neighborhoods. The last racially segregated school in Guysborough, Nova Scotia was shut down in 1983. 37 years later, some in Ottawa were still in complete denial that black populations continued to struggle in the absence of real, meaningful structural changes. According to the Black Portrait of Ottawa, the average unemployment rate was 30% in marginalized areas of the city, in comparison to 0% in the most affluent ones. This was not a secret. People knew this for decades. It was a common knowledge that the general population's poverty rate was just 12% compared to a staggering 28% for the black population. Those numbers did not shock too many in the early 21st century. The exponential inequity was as acceptable in the 21st century as denying black families access to local public schools in Alberta, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island until the mid-20th century. In the early 21st century, only 4% of the black population in Ottawa could make it to the management positions, compared to 12% of the general population. The unemployment rate for the black population remained around 13% compared to 6% for the general population. It was the measure of black people who wanted to work but could not get a job, not that black people were not trying. Every age has its blind spot. In Canada, despite the apparent end of the racial segregation laws and racist social practices by the mid-20th century, when in-your-face racism and discrimination was not legal anymore, it became insidious. It became in-your-back discrimination. The system simultaneously gave white Canadians privileges and access to citizenship aspects that others could not have. Unfortunately, those who were thriving in the early 21st century in Ottawa couldn't even comprehend the extent of inequity and the need to remove systemic barriers. This was just like Americans of the past, who were so steeped in the tenets of American Declaration of Independence, yet still accepted the enslavement of human beings as completely normal. So there is an interesting similarity here. Just like those benign paintings of the old plantations showing orderly agrarian paradise with happy childlike slaves cared for by their masters, so just like those benign paintings couldn't hide the injustices and unfairness in the 18th, 19th, and 20th century, similarly, the cheerful cosmetic posters of multi-race smiley faces on the multicultural banners and posters failed to cover the continuation of the same unfairness and exponential inequities in the 21st century.